Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cover One Roundup here, live on the Cover One YouTube channel each and every Monday night at 7 o'clock. That's when we are. That's what time it is right now. My name.
Crazy.
I know, right? Sometimes I just look at the clock and I get, just like, whoa. My name's Kyle Silagyi, and I can tell time. And I'm joined this and every week by David Fox. And today we are here to discuss our takeaways from, as I put in the tweet earlier, our takeaways from the Buffalo Bills' not at all stressful Week 4 win over the Baltimore Ravens. I was never concerned about this game. Do not check my text messages to my friends. Do not check my Twitter from yesterday. Never was I ever concerned about the outcome of this football game. David, one, how are you? It doesn't seem like you had an eventful week. And two, this football game.
Just had a giant hurricane just sort of blow through. No big deal. No big deal. Thankfully, we are all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
My week was real stressful. Didn't have a hurricane or anything, but the Bills, man, those just thinking about the Bills all week really got to me.
Listen, that game yesterday, it took a while for my heart rate to drop to a normal range. That game was a lot.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that good stuff regarding this game, which, the game ended very differently than it started, obviously. I had already kind of started the podcast prep in the second quarter. I was just like, I'm going off about this. I'm going off about this. Everyone's catching stray bullets tomorrow. But thankfully the team just kind of woke up there in the second quarter, and it kind of carried throughout the rest of the throughout the game, thankfully. So we're going to be, I think, a lot more positive. More positive than I anticipated being, but just in general, I think everyone is leaving this game with a sense of happiness, a sense of joy, whimsy even.
What an ugly win is what Roy Collins just said here, and that is true. But an ugly win is so much better than an ugly loss.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather. Right. I can be happy about an ugly win, right? But you know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves.
That's right.
Before we get into our takeaways from the game, and again, we have takeaways, we have to, again, pay the bills. So this show and Cover One in general are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. David, can you tell us a little bit about Underdog?
I would love to tell everyone about Underdog Fantasy because Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football, Underdog Fantasy. If you have just your one home league and that one draft each year isn't enough for you, then Underdog Fantasy is for you. It's all of the fun of drafting your own players without the waivers and lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your own team and chances to win big with none of the week-to-week hassle. Use promo code COVER1, that's the number 1, when signing up to make your first deposit, and Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That's $100 in free play if you use promo code COVER1. Even better, Underdog's Best Ball Mania 3 contest is going to make 3 players millionaires. That's right. $10 million in total prizes, $2 million to the first, $1 million to the second, and $1 million bonus to the team with the most regular season points. 3 chances to win at least $1 million. Sign up now using promo code COVER1 and take your chance at $1 million today with Underdog Fantasy.
Again, that is promo code COVER1. Number 1. Okay. And before we move on, again, we have so many things to get to before we talk about football every week. Cover One Pass is something that you should consider subscribing to. What is Cover One Pass? Well, that is the Cover One streaming service, if you will. Exclusive members-only content, as you can see here on the screen, whether that be in-depth film breakdowns, written content over there on the website being cooked up by David sometimes, not last week due to hurricane, but Greg Vors, Uber Hansen, who's been on this podcast, so was Greg, Ryan Sullivan, Rob Quinn. Bunch of great stuff over there on the website, on the actual written side of Cover One. And then, again, you have access to the Cover One Premium Slack. Bunch of great stuff there at Cover One Pass. Become an insider today. Only $57 per year. Again, what a value. what's the song? Not bare. It is Bare Naked Ladies. 1 week. No, it's not. I don't know. 1 week. Burke. I'm blanking on the reference.
Let's move
Something
on.
something.
Let's move
I'm
on.
all about value. No, David, I'm not going to move on, and I'm so upset because it's my karaoke song. And I understand the appeal of karaoke is that it has the words in front of you, right? But I've done it so many times, I should just know the words. I shouldn't need the words in front of me when I sing this song. And here I am forgetting the words. It's something I'm all about value, but it doesn't matter. The Roundup. This is the segment where we talk about the latest news, rumors, and all that other stuff surrounding the Buffalo Bills in a quick and roundup fashion. Really only one piece of news coming out of this game yesterday against the Baltimore Ravens, and that unfortunately is the injury of Jameson Crowder. Broke his ankle against the Baltimore Ravens, and he is out indefinitely. Jameson Crowder, of course, enters the offseason with a little bit of buzz around him. Signs. Was he with the Commanders most recently or the Jets most recently?
He was with the Jets most recently because he had that. I remember him having that big game in like week 1 a couple years ago when that was really the Jets' only receiving option, and they threw him like 13 times in that game. Yeah, he was with the Jets last year.
And he was pretty good. But the thing about him has always been can't stay healthy. And we've talked about that numerous times on this podcast. Yeah. Like he's gonna get his playing time, but we'll see if he can stay healthy. And he had, obviously I don't think he had the offseason that a lot of us were expecting because couldn't get on the field. And then Isaiah McKenzie comes in and kind of steals the job. But he had played a bit throughout this season. 33% of the team's offensive snaps, had 6 receptions for 60 yards. Up until his injury here, and he was their primary punt returner. So that is something that the Bills will have to look at moving forward. Who is going to return punts, and not so much who's going to be the backup slot receiver because McKenzie is the receiver, but he currently has a concussion. Again, you can just, given how Tua aside, no, actually that's a back injury, but whatever. But no. But just concussions, typically a 1 to 2 week injury. Again, typically, obviously, all concussions are different, but typically you're looking at 1 to 2 weeks if a player misses any time. So with Crowder out indefinitely and McKenzie on the injury list here for at least the time being, David, do you think that Crowder is a player that the Bills look outside of their organization off of the roster here to replace, or do you think it's just Khalil Shakir is getting his responsibilities?
I think that they kind of by default they have to bring up Khalil Shakir to be the number 3 behind Davis and Diggs because with McKenzie out and Crowder out, you gotta keep going down the depth chart. And Shakir had a couple of like pretty critical catches in that game, which was really great to see. But you also just need depth. Period. And you can call up somebody like Isaiah Hodgins from the practice squad, but that still only leaves you essentially with 4 guys. You hope to have someone like Jake Kumaro back. That would be nice because at the very least he can work out there as a run blocker, and as long as you're throwing to him not too consistently, you feel pretty comfortable with him as a receiver. Just whenever he needs to catch a ball, you just hope it's not a critical situation. But I think that they'll bring in some veteran guys. Where's Tanner Gentry at these days? Is he on the practice squad?
He's selling PS5s on the Twitter. That's what he's up to. You guys got a new side gig, That might be, PS5s are so damn expensive. That might be his main gig at this point. I don't know if he's seeing any of the money from it.
Yeah, he is on the practice squad. So he might get a call up too if they really need him to come in. Which is not something you really want to have happen, but unfortunately that's kind of where the Bills are at the moment. So
there's gotta be look, I understand value in knowing the system and having been here for a couple of weeks, or Gentry's been here more than a couple of weeks, I guess, but I feel like he's just stuck around in some capacity for years at this point because he's Josh Allen's friend from college. But there's gotta be, if they do look outside of the organization or outside or off of their current active roster, there's got to be someone better than Tanner Gentry. There's got to be. David, I'm going to say a name just aloud to the class, okay, and to the chat. I want some I want some feedback here on this name I'm
Go
about
ahead,
to
Kyle.
say. Tavon Austin.
Oh, you mean starting slot receiver? Tavon Austin?
Yes,
Remember the month of July?
he can do it. He can do it. I mean,
Oh,
he
gosh.
is. If it's, I mean, Shakir. Look, I think Shakir is until Crowder comes back or until Shakir, proves otherwise. Shakir is going to be the backup slot. He played well in, a little bit of duty yesterday. I'm going to talk about Shakir later. I got a nice little segment about Khalil Shakir planned, and then he'll be the backup slot. But like, if McKenzie can't go, and next week you're looking at Shakir even getting starting slot duty, or if he's punt returner / backup slot, I mean, you almost got to look at Tavon Austin as the next man up in this situation. Like, obviously, Isaiah Hodgins is the more, maybe, obviously, higher ceiling long term than Tavon Austin currently. And I do want to get Isaiah Hodgins reps at some point this year. I would like to see what Isaiah Hodgins has and if he can bring something to this team. But if we're just looking at like Crowder out, who in, it's Tavon Austin. I think he is the most, I guess, apt person to look at here, just given the play style, given like they're different players, obviously, but looking at role, like Hodgins, I guess, can be a big slot, but he's not the player that Jameson Crowder is. Tavon Austin is closer to that style of player than Isaiah Hodgins is. And plus, Hodgins is the returning kicks or punts. Tavon Austin, that's kind of what he would bring return or value wise. And again, I think especially if McKenzie is sidelined here for longer, even a week, I think Tavon Austin plays maybe as early as next week, because if Shakir's the starting slot, they're not putting him on punt return duty.
I mean, that's kind of what they've been doing with McKenzie, though, isn't it? Like,
he's
to
been
an
doing
extent,
kicks, right?
I thought, wasn't he doing punts too? Or no, Crowder was doing punts before he got his leg broke. But
before he broke his ankle.
But I mean, Khalil Shakir came out of the preseason listed as the leading return guy. So I don't really know. It'll be interesting to see exactly how they decide to shake things out. If they want to bring up Tavon Austin to essentially just be the return guy, I'm totally cool with that. Maybe we get a vintage Tavon Austin moment for absolutely no reason at all, which would be fun. But I'm not exactly counting on it either. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Bills do with this particular conundrum at wide receiver. And hey, this is why you have a large depth. This is why you have depth at wide receiver, because sometimes stuff like this happens, and suddenly you're like, oh yeah, Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are both really good. And when you have 3 injuries or whatever at the other position, it's like, okay, you need a couple other guys.
Yeah, people are talking about OBJ in chat. Who's going to say it first, peeps? OBJ. One day, right? We can dream one day, but he's not ready.
You can talk about OBJ, but OBJ is like not ready to go either. Like, he'll basically be ready to go when Jameson Crowder comes back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. But like long term, right. Yeah. Come back in 4 weeks and we will have a lengthy conversation about OBJ. We have had conversations about OBJ in the past, but right now it's just I don't nothing doing, if you will, right? No smoke. But yeah. I just think it's funny. I love getting dunked on, right? It's one of my favorite things to do is getting
You're very good at it.
Right. And it happens quite frequently. So it's become quite a favorite hobby of mine. But I love how, like, after the Bills signed Tavon Austin, I think I got on this podcast and you may have joined me in the dunking on Tavon Austin. We just kind of laughed at people kind of spreading this Tavon Austin hype, looking at him as like a real player who could potentially make this team. He didn't make the team, but he did make the practice squad. And given how circumstances are shaking out, he could play as early as week 5. So good for you, Tavon Austin. I again, your college highlight film, your mixtape, if you will, is incredible. And I'd love to see some of it here coming up should the opportunity arise. Okay, now we're actually going to talk about this Buffalo Bills at Baltimore Ravens game. Again, a game in which at they 1 point were down 20-3. They did not look good whatsoever. Nothing was going their way, and they just kind of scratched and clawed, and they just worked their way back into the game. David, before we get into specific takeaways, just what are your general thoughts from this game?
So here's something, right? Second half of opening week against the Rams. The score at halftime was 10-10, right? That game ended 31-10 Bills. So Bills held the Rams to no points at halftime. Second half of this particular game, the Ravens were leading 20-3, 20-10, 20-3, 20-10.
No, it was 20-3 at one point.
No, it was 20-3 at one point, but it was 20-10 at halftime, right?
Yeah,
because they scored like right. Okay, so the game ended 23-20 Bills. Completely held the Ravens to 0 points in the second half. If I had a nickel for every time the Bills have held an opponent to 0 points in the second half, which they also did against the Titans on Monday Night Football, I'd have 3 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that it's happened 3 times in 4 weeks. And honestly, they weren't really that far away from doing it to Miami either. I think kind of getting lost in the Josh Allen hype train, which is very easy to get lost on because it's a great hype train to be on, I'll be honest. But getting lost in that conversation is how good this defense has been. I mean, it's kind of insane, and it's so funny because this is more or less, with the addition of guys like Daquan Jones and Tim Settle and Von Miller, obviously, this is not too far off from what this defense was last year when they were the number 1 DVOA ranked defense in the NFL. And there were a lot of people, Bills fans included, who were like, that's a bunch of bull. They're not as good. They don't take the opponent into account, which is exactly what DVOA does, by the way. It seems like now people are sort of taking this defense more seriously. And they're doing this without Micah Hyde the last 2 weeks. They're doing it without a number of cornerbacks. And it's largely because this defensive line has been absolutely incredible. And the 2 linebackers, and we'll get to them, Milano and Edmonds, have been playing out of their minds to start the season. I mean,
wonder why.
it's a mystery. It's like, but this is a great team that they have assembled, that they can sustain these sort of injuries and still just hold teams to no points for a whole half of football. Crazy.
Yeah, and that's kind of my first takeaway here. So we'll finally get into that 18 minutes into the damn show. But yeah, my first takeaway is that despite, again, we talked last week ad nauseum about circumstances and the extenuating circumstances that this team found themselves in. I think I said the word circumstances more in last week's podcast than I had in my entire 25 years of existence up until then. But anyway, even against adversity this year or this week, some of it self-inflicted, but again, the injuries to Ed Oliver, no Micah Hyde, no Jordan Phillips, missing some corners still. Bills Mafia, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Is a trade for Saquon Barkley realistic? That's a talking point later in the show. That's a tease for
we will get
rubbish.
There. We will get
Thank you very much. Yeah, even down, like I said, Micah Hyde, Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips, no Christian Benford, no Trey White still. And after that so slow start, they were down 20-3 in the second quarter. They just put it on. They were incredibly stout yet again. And they are going to keep this team in games like yesterday that they have no right being in, right? For most of the game, they have no right there for at least that first quarter there. They had no right being in that game going into half and then throughout. But this defense keeps them in this game, gives them a fighting chance to win. And they're going to do that each and every week. And like I said, they did not look good early. Again, they gave up a touchdown. Granted, on an incredibly short field to start the game because it was Josh Allen. I think his second pass gets tipped into the hands of Marlon Humphrey, who returns it. I mean, damn near to the goal line, a couple yards off, but then they punch it in rather quickly. And then next drive, Baltimore goes on a 15-play, 81-yard scoring drive, which, again, the defense looked lost on that series. I was just like, oh, we are in for a bad game. This is just Lamar Jackson. this is Lamar Jackson's the best player in the NFL right now, and he's going to make an example out of Buffalo's defense. And then from there, after that 15-play, 81-yard scoring drive, they give up 2 more field goals throughout the rest of the game, right? 6 points after allowing 14 on the first 2 drives. Again, 6 points from the second quarter onward. On Baltimore's first 4 drives, they picked up 135 total yards. And then throughout the rest of the game, they only pick up 123 yards. So, like, Baltimore got their stuff in early, and then never again. Buffalo just said, nope. We're done. You're done. You're not moving the ball on us, really. And they did kind of to an extent. Like there was the drive that ended in the Jordan Poyer pick in the end zone later on. Baltimore did kind of move the ball a little bit there. But for the most part, this defense just didn't allow them to score, largely kept them from doing anything really of note. And you talk about the defensive line. Von Miller is just still a menace at 30 whatever years of age. Dude is just still a menace. Had 1 sack, 5 total pressures, 2 run stops yesterday. Greg Rousseau is continuing this, not even unforeseen or unprecedented, or not unprecedented, obviously, but like this. It was expected, right? Like I said
to
last
an extent.
week. Right,
to
but
an
like
extent.
everything pointed, like his year last year, the coaching staff, the improvements around him, Greg Rousseau being one of them, or Von Miller being one of them, everything pointed to Greg Rousseau having a very strong sophomore year. And I mean, he has what, 4.5 sacks or 4 sacks through 4 games. Again, had half a sack yesterday. Again, 5 total pressures and still played well against the run. It just this dude who is in his second professional season, 3rd year playing defensive end, now averaging a sack a game and is a stout run defender. And he's still just this genetic lottery winner at 6'7" with a wingspan bigger than Sasquatch. It's just like this. Greg Rousseau is going to be a player, I think is the best way to describe Greg Rousseau.
Greg Rousseau is already a player. That's the thing, right? It's like when you are already as a rookie, one of the best run defending edges in the NFL, and by PFF's grading system, however you want to take that, he was the best run defending edge in the NFL last year as a rookie. And Anthony Prohaska, also of Cover One fame, mentioned this probably a couple weeks ago, or maybe even near the start of the season, where he said something to the effect of like, Greg Rousseau being a high-level run defender means that whatever you get from him as a pass rusher is kind of almost like a bonus, where like he has such a high floor because of that ability to defend the run, and you just kind of know based on effort and physical traits, he's gonna get a decent amount of sacks. It may not be that he's some sort of elite level Von Miller type of pass rusher at any point in his career, but it's also that he doesn't really have to be. He can, if his future is as like the best defensive end number 2 in the NFL, a lot of teams would like that. A lot of teams would love to have Greg Rousseau on their team, where you could just count on him to give you great run defense, great effort, and just to have that type of length where he can just sort of swipe at someone just going by them, and he's probably going to make a play somehow.
Right.
And the fact that he can do like stunts as well and be super effective on stunts as he's been throughout the first 4 games. I mean, this is a weird, freaky cat that the Bills have, and they're deploying him and using him exactly how he should be used.
Yeah, and like I was having a conversation with my friend earlier, and I was just like, there are numerous factors that go into Greg Rousseau being what Greg Rousseau is now. Greg Rousseau is the biggest factor, obviously. Von Miller is another one. Daquan Jones is a factor that a lot of people have been talking about. Daquan Jones, thankfully, he's kind of getting his flowers, getting the love he deserves. But he has been so impactful on that defensive line. Really, again, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, allowing the rest of the defense to do what it wants to do. And again, he even gets a half a sack yesterday. And seeing this increased production and increased presence of the defensive line, they really have the defensive line now that McDermott and Bean have wanted for years. They have that defensive line, 6 years in now? And now the rest of the defense, which has been really good the entire time, it's now, or 1 year maybe they weren't great, but like now the entire defense is just benefiting from having that type of defensive line. The linebackers in particular. I won't go too far into the linebackers here because David, that's one of your takeaways later. But Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, like, I don't care who you think is playing better. They are both playing incredibly well right now. Tremaine Edmonds, the slander, I think, has stopped for the most part. Or at least it is, if it hasn't stopped entirely.
It's been quieted.
Right. It is much less frequent than I once saw, and I've seen nothing but praise for Matt Milano. And again, the Matt Milano slander was always a little few and far between, if you will. But Matt Milano has been incredible through 4 games. And again, Edmonds has been very good as well. The defensive backs, the secondary yesterday, Jordan Poyer, two interceptions. We'll talk about him later. Are we going to find a way? Will Brandon Beane find a way to pay Jordan Poyer? We'll talk about it later, but I sure hope they find a way to get Jordan Poyer. Again, he has 4 interceptions in 3 games now because he missed week 3. So, that was week 3. So Poyer has 4 picks in 3 games, 2 yesterday, the game-clinching one after what, like a 9-play drive. Looked like he was crying afterwards, but he was, spent after getting that interception there. Damar Hamlin, not great, not terrible. No. That's what I will say about Damar Hamlin. Not Micah Hyde, but also I don't think he looked like a second-year rookie who was a 6th-round pick, playing on 100% of the snaps in a system that asks a lot of its safeties. Like, obviously, Hamlin wasn't being asked to do the same things that Micah Hyde does. But I thought Damar Hamlin, again, noticed him a couple of times in a bad way, also noticed him a couple of times in a really good way, like that tackle there inside the 5 on Lamar Jackson, open field tackle. Lamar kind of went down a little bit, but Damar Hamlin still made the stop, keeping Lamar Jackson out of the end zone and then ultimately forcing that 4th down, on which Jordan Poyer makes that game-clinching interception. So again, we've talked a lot about Damar Hamlin on this podcast, maybe more than anyone else should, maybe more than we should have talked about Damar Hamlin up until this point. But again, when Hyde goes down, it looks like Jaquan Johnson's going to be the guy to kind of take over. Did Johnson play yesterday?
I can have my producer very quickly take a look at that.
I do not remember him getting hurt, but I also don't remember seeing him yesterday.
I don't remember seeing him either. So
Hamlin played 100% of the snaps. So
when you have Jordan Poyer out there, I think that you kind of just have to kind of keep him off. I think.
RJ writes, so they had Hamlin rotating coverage just like Micah. That's high level stuff right there. He didn't play. Okay, Jaquan Johnson.
He had 16 special team snaps.
Okay, he's a guy who I think he was PFF's worst graded safety in the NFL last week. So obviously they don't. It doesn't. But I'm just using that as an example of kind of just the kind of what some people thought of Jaquan Johnson's game last week. And Damar Hamlin, again, he was noticeable, sometimes good, sometimes in a bad way. I am excited about Damar Hamlin's future here. Made a couple of plays yesterday. And then Kaiir Elam. That's all I have to say about Kaiir Elam. A good outing yesterday. Dane Jackson returning. I think my overall takeaways here from just this defense is, like I said at the start here, they are going to keep this team in games that they shouldn't be in. Again, they kind of allowed them to it wasn't the defense's fault that they found themselves in that 20-3 hole early. It was just kind of a medley of bullshit, if you will. Again, some self-inflicted, some just extenuating circumstances. But to just after allowing 14 on the first 2 drives to then only allow 6 points throughout the rest of the game, all of those 6 points coming in the second quarter again. So then you allow 6 after allowing an initial 14 and then none in the second half, and holding them to 123 yards throughout the rest of the game after they outgained that on their first 4 drives. Really good bounce back here from the defense, keeping them in the game and allowing that offense to finally pick up the pieces, get its shit together, if you will, and ultimately put enough points on the board to win.
Yeah. We'll kind of dig a little bit further into the defense later, but my first takeaway is conditions be damned, they won a close game. And obviously, we talked about this ad nauseum last week when they lost against Miami. That, this is a team that's lost a lot of close games recently, and this was a team under McDermott that had started off winning a lot of close games, and for whatever reason or another, started losing close games. And the reality was that there was no singular reason why they were losing close games. It wasn't like, oh, the run defense is so bad and they keep giving up blah 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 in the fourth quarter or something, or the coverage is terrible, or Josh Allen has a turnover in the fourth quarter, or there's always a drop by somebody in the fourth. There was never a single defining reason why they lost close games, which also made it more frustrating to just watch, and because you just want to focus in on something and try and figure out your own sort of solution to that. You want to just blame something, but when you can't, then you kind of sort of left like, well, what do we even say now? They just can't win close games. But the conditions in this game, I mean, again, dealing with a lot of injuries coming into the game and then during the game at wide receiver in particular, self-inflicted wounds early on, leading to a 17-point deficit, and then just crazy weather. I mean, it rained and rained and rained, and it didn't stop raining at any point during that game. And frankly, that should have played more into Baltimore's hands, especially when they had J.K. Dobbins back, who they've been pretty reluctant about getting him on the field. And maybe they just didn't want to overwork him in sort of less than ideal conditions. But I mean, regardless of that, you still have Lamar Jackson, who is still one of the most dynamic and difficult to defend quarterbacks in the NFL, largely because he can run. And he definitely got some plays yesterday, some very irritating type of plays where it's you can see everything is covered, and against most other quarterbacks, that's all you need to do. But against Lamar, he could just jog over to the sideline for 6 yards, and that's it. And he definitely had some of his plays, but for the most part, I mean, they just did a great job against Lamar. They did a great job stopping a very dynamic and difficult to defend run game for the most part. There were some chunk plays. There were some plays, a couple of missed tackles here and there, but honestly, not as many as one might think against a team that, and particularly a quarterback that can make anyone miss. Honestly, I mean, there were a couple times where there was that one play where Milano tackled Jackson in the open field, and I was kind of in shock. Because it looked like he was about to get shaken out of his cleats.
Yeah.
And no one would have blamed him. It's Lamar Jackson.
It's happened to him before.
It has. But he just held on and got enough of his ankle. And Lamar was just God, couldn't just get away from this dude. And you get to that goal line stand in particular. I mean, first and goal, pass right down to the 1 yard line. And had Edmonds not been in position to just touch him, Duvernay down, that's a touchdown, and we're talking about a different game here. Second and goal, try to run the ball. Milano sticks him right in the backfield. I mean, just a great hand. There were a couple. He's had a number of just those sorts of tackles where he just sticks a dude, and it's super impressive. Third and goal, I can't remember. Did they pass or did they run on third and goal?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, they tried to pass. They tried to pass. Lamar tried to scramble up the middle and tripped. And he couldn't quite get to the goal line. So then they're left at fourth and goal at the 1. And you could see how the Bills were playing on the defensive line. They were basically just we're not going to let you get outside of us. We're not going to let you get outside of us. We will literally ride you all the way to the other end zone, but you're not getting outside of us. And Lamar just kept fading and fading and fading. And on that replay, you could see Duvernay in the back of the end zone, wide ass open, totally left alone in the corner. And at the very last possible second, Jordan Poyer and Lamar Jackson see the exact same thing. And that's that Duvernay is wide open and Jackson floats it up, and he has to float it up because he's under pressure. He keeps fading, but he has the arm strength to just float it up there and get it there. And Poyer just comes in right as the ball gets there and picks it off. And that is so critical, not just to get the stop on 4th and goal, which is obviously very important, but also because it's an interception in the end zone and he went down immediately, touchback. You're no longer starting at the 2 where a very hungry and kind of pissed off Ravens defense is probably looking to get a safety, and certainly not out of the realm of possibility where they could get one.
Mhm.
And then the Bills take that, and then they just go right down the field.
Can we talk about the Ravens' decision to go for it there? Because I have seen some people kind of questioning the decision to go for it on 4th and goal, to not take the 3, to instead try to score a touchdown. As soon as Harbaugh made the call, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I would have done the same thing. I think that was the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think there's a weird number of, we'll just call it what it is. Very old boomer coaches who get mad at anybody doing anything different than what they did when they were coaches. This is your Jason Garrett's, your Tony Dungy's, your Bill Cowers, and they kind of make it seem like Harbaugh is just looking at like a spreadsheet, because they still believe that everything is done on a spreadsheet. Anything that's analytics is just on a spreadsheet. Which kind of just shows you how disconnected they are from all of this. But they kind of make it seem like he's just, doing this because the numbers are saying it. And like Harbaugh is doing this because analytically, there's a lot of evidence to suggest going for it in that particular situation is the right call. But he is also a coach who we have seen the last 3 years, they've built a large part of their identity in going for it in those situations.
Right. It's
And
just been
in
trusting
being
Lamar.
fearless. Yeah. I mean, do we not remember 2 years ago, right, when they played the Chiefs? Or maybe this was last year. I can't quite remember. When they played the Chiefs in week 3, it was last year. And there's that moment where the camera is just focused on Harbaugh on 4th and inches near midfield, and he's yelling, Lamar, you want to go for it?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. And you know what? Everybody loved that decision then. Why? Because it worked. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Yeah. Everybody loves to Monday morning quarterback these sorts of situations. When it doesn't work. Because when it works, you're like, oh, wow, look at that coach. He just trusts his players. He's great. Good for him. He really went for it. And then when it doesn't work, you can't just look at the analytics and just make your decisions based off that. You got to trust your players to get the stop. You got to take the points. It's always the dumbest. That might be one of my least favorite points in football now, is take the points. Hey, you know what's another way to take points? By scoring 6 points instead of scoring 3 points. That's a way to take points. But it's always such an aggravating conversation, because a lot of the time it ends up missing the actual point of the discussion. And it's just what we should be talking about is, okay, all the analytics and data is just giving you the most information possible to make an informed decision. That's what it's there for. The data is there to give you the clearest picture possible and give you a suggestion, essentially based on previous numbers. But at the end of the day, it's a coach's decision. And, coaches of the past didn't have these sorts of analytics available to them. But regardless, they were still making decisions based on sort of their own logic. And they never got the same level of criticism for that. At least it wasn't the same talking point. You know what I mean? Like, whereas this, I guess it's because now we sort of feel like there are answers to what probably previously seemed like an unanswerable question. It's probably aggravating certain coaches because they just sort of live off of their own instincts, and trying to say to them, yes, there is an actual answer here. Whether you take it is up to you, but there is an actual answer here. and they say no, there isn't. I think that's where a lot of the conflict comes with that particular part of the conversation. And you need to, and there just needs to be a better overall understanding of, first of all, just what analytics are, and trying to figure out when and where to go for it, and understanding that it being the right decision is not dependent on it working, right? Like that's sometimes some of this is not going to work, but that's okay, because as long as you have a consistent process and you are doing something correctly, and unless there's a particular trend or pattern where going for it is actually costing you games consistently, which doesn't appear to be what's happening with the Ravens, at least from my perspective, then you need to just acknowledge when the right process is being used.
Well said. I don't know. I do think that people who are saying it was the wrong decision are doing so with the benefit of hindsight, right? Like the I guess the call of, okay, either or Harbaugh, look at the situation. You obviously don't expect Lamar Jackson to throw an interception in the end zone in that situation. You're looking at it with your two outcomes. And again, it's always possible that Lamar throws an interception, but you don't expect it. So you're looking at it as, okay, either I have 7 and they get it on the 25, or I have a touchdown lead and they get it on the 25, or they need to drive the entire length of the field to get 3. Right? Like those are the two options. Obviously, the worst case scenario plays out, but you can't really forecast the worst case scenario. You can't coach with the worst case scenario is going to happen in mind. Like,
because when you do that, you're just coaching scared. You're coaching to not lose games rather than coaching to win games. And that's unfortunately what a lot of NFL coaches, particularly of the past, have done. And thankfully, we're seeing more coaches now who are being more aggressive. John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, Andy Reid, being those types of coaches. But there's still some coaches who are just like, nope, got to just take the points. Got to take the points.
That's enough Ravens talk. But ultimately, again, them missing that player, getting that interception does set up the Bills being able to go down there and score that game-winning field goal. And again, that's another thing, right? Is the Bills kill 4 minutes of clock, aided by a iffy, I will say an iffy roughing the passer call.
That is not okay. Can we? We're gonna briefly talk about this. The dude stopped right in front of Josh Allen. Stopped in front of Josh Allen. Allen threw it, and then he went into Josh Allen. He had a solid amount of time to sit there, and he either needed to just go right through him, and maybe he missed the tackle. Maybe that's why he hesitated, but that doesn't matter. Okay? The fact is he hesitated, and then Allen threw it, and then he just went right into him. Sorry, that's roughing the passer. Now, you could get...
I'm fine
people
with
could get bent out of shape. People could get bent out of shape because Allen likes to complain to the refs, which he does. Like, whatever. I don't really care. When it's my quarterback, I'll say it.
Right, yeah.
But...
right. If I were rooting against Josh Allen, I'd be like, nah, piece of shit. But no,
I mean, that's how I feel looking at Mahomes. Or, like...
Or when Brady did it, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, that by what I feel, from what I've seen of what roughing the passer is, that's a late hit. Like, I'm sorry. You had time to pull up, and you just went right into him. I don't know.
Again, regardless, the roughing the passer is called. Bills are able to, again, continue killing out the final 4 minutes. That's what did them in, was the... there was an early challenge, right, which cost them a timeout, so then they only have 2 in the final 4 minutes. Again, you shouldn't... 2 timeouts in the final 4 minutes should be fine. You should be able to get a stop, and they can't. And
that challenge by Harbaugh on that spot that Lamar Jackson clearly got. Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
Can we stop talking about that stupid 4th down discussion and talk about he reaches the ball over? He is not out of bounds. How does this game work? how does this game work, Kyle? I don't understand. Where like
I
you
often
reach
ask
the
myself
ball
that,
out
David.
beyond the first down marker, you're not out of bounds. How is that not a first down? Now it ends up being fine because the Ravens go for it and they get
And they
it.
get it, right? So we waste 15 minutes for nothing. But
Right. But
like,
like I was I was floored when they held up that call that it was short. I could not process that in my mind. Beyond comprehension to me.
see, in real time, to me, it didn't look like he got it. Then when they slowed it
Right.
down and I watched it for 15 straight minutes in slow
Right.
motion, I was like, yeah, I'd give it to him. I think he got it. But again, they apparently didn't see enough to overturn it, which, again, like you said, ultimately doesn't matter because they just, Lamar falls forward and, he gets it. But that was.
The angle wasn't good enough to overturn the call. You need definitive proof because of the camera angles. Okay. Well, I saw it watching a tiny little box in the NFL mix because that was what I was restricted to because the local CBS station refused to go away from their little dark room of radio broadcasters talking about morbid news post hurricane. I could see it from my TV angle. What were they looking at?
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. We're all
I'm
good.
getting mad about another team trying to get a first down against my favorite team. What is happening? What is broken about the NFL? It's a broken system, Kyle.
Kenny writes, it's marked where the ball goes over the sideline, not where he steps out of bounds. Yeah, but like I thought, yes, but I thought he did. I guess is what I'm saying. Like I thought he did reach it over in time, but
Yeah,
whatever. You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Uh, Again, Ravens can't get the damn stop with 4 minutes left. That's the bigger issue than the fourth down decision than anything else. Make a stop, Ravens, and you can't. Buffalo runs out the clock, obviously scores the last minute field goal. And I'm going to move to my second takeaway here because we're 46 minutes deep and we're just on our second takeaway here. So my takeaway here, and I'm going to pose a question to you in the chat here at the end of this takeaway. So just my I guess second takeaway is this team is resilient. Sean McDermott has long preached having a resilient team, having a team that never say die attitude, just is going to be in it until the final punch. But at some points in recent years, hasn't felt like that's the type of team that he has. This is the first time in quite some time. Like I always feel like when the Bills are down late, granted it's not often, but whenever they are down late and Josh Allen has the ball, I trust that Josh Allen's going to figure it out because that's just the type of player that Josh Allen is at this point. But just like this is the first game in a long time where I have sensed resiliency from this team. Again, and this is a game where the Bills very easily could have rolled over early, as they did a couple of times last year. You think about the Colts game, they fell behind early, they just never got into it.
The Jags game.
The Jags game, right, where they just were never in it. They just didn't show up to Jacksonville that day. They gave Urban Meyer a win in the NFL. Weird game. But that again, like that, when I talk about just the lack of resiliency from this team in past years. But again, yesterday you do see some of that resiliency, and like I said, could have rolled over many times in this game. Did it look like it just wasn't their day? Again, the tipped balls throughout the game, especially the one that Marlon Humphrey comes down with and returns it's damn near the goal line. The Devin Singletary fumble, which sets up the Ravens field goal. The Lamar Jackson play where he just kind of ran around, somehow escaped the clasp of what seemed like every Bills defender. Bills had him dead to rights, and he escapes it somehow, just kind of scrambles, rolls out, throws it down the field. It gets bobbled, and Ravens still come down with it. Just like plays like that, moments like that, where it's just like, oh, the football gods don't want the Bills today. Like everything's going against them. It's just not their day. For this team to kind of not get too high, not get too low, to just very steadily. And that's the thing is, like, looking back on this game, there weren't many like big plays from the Bills, like big memorable plays. It was just kind of slowly but surely work your way back into the game. And before you knew it, it's the third quarter. Again, you're down 20-3 in the first half. And then by the third quarter, you're already back in the game. It's tied 20-20. again, they just slowly but surely worked their way back into this game. And it was a very good outing. One of my true rubbish was going to be, this is like the best Sean McDermott coaching performance in recent years. I didn't ultimately put that, but it's one of my more memorable, I guess, Sean McDermott coaching outings after a week where a lot of people were questioning him. A lot of people, not on the hot seat by any means, but a lot of people were kind of questioning his in-game decision-making, things like that. But McDermott, again, yesterday, just in the face of adversity, like we said earlier, some self-inflicted, but just in the face of being down 20-3 in the first quarter in these conditions when you are kind of hampered injury-wise, to kind of construct this comeback, to make those I can't even think of like any adjustments, if you will, off the top of my head, because they kind of happened in the second quarter more than they did,
right?
At halftime, if you will.
And that was sort of something that Stephon Diggs alluded to in his press conference afterwards, was that he basically just said, like, yeah, once we started doing what they were coaching us to do, like, that was when we started working.
Right. Yeah. And again, good outing from McDermott. Dorsey kind of stumbled out of the gate. Just obviously, I don't think this was a Ken Dorsey call, if you will, but like the play where Davis and Crowder ran to the same area of the field, like the same spot, and it goes off of Crowder's fingertips. Just weird play that, again, I'm not going to say it on Dorsey, but again, good recovery, good never say die attitude. Here's the question that I'm raising to you, David, and to the chat. Does last year's Bills team win that game yesterday?
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think they do.
I don't know. This is not too different of a team than it was last year. There are obvious upgrades in certain positions, to be sure, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's certainly possible for them to have won that game, but there's also, something different. I'll tell you one of those things that what
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you for indulging me. I don't know, maybe.
I know. I'm very I whatever. But one of the things that I will say is that something that probably wouldn't have happened last year that did happen this year is that 2nd and 11 call on that game-winning drive where Dorsey calls the bubble screen, or the tunnel screen rather, to Devin Singletary, which, first of all, great creative use of Devin Singletary. But this team historically, I mean, with Brian Daboll in particular, and we love Brian Daboll on this podcast, or at least I have been a strong supporter of Daboll amongst weird troves of haters. But one of the things they couldn't do with Daboll is run screens, pretty much ever. For whatever reason, they just could not do it. And to be able to run a screen like that on 2nd and 11, you watch the blocks that Davis and Knox and Spencer Brown get on that play. That is one of the prettiest plays the Bills have run in a very long time. A play that they just probably haven't called in a very long time. And they executed it perfectly in a clutch moment to pick up a first down on 2nd and long. That was a true Ken Dorsey stroke of genius that I don't think Brian Daboll does. And again, like, Brian Daboll is a very, very good offensive coordinator and a very good play caller. But that was a true Ken Dorsey moment. And it was pretty impressive to see that call.
Ken Dorsey special, if you will.
Indeed.
Where I'm trying to. Bills fan says no. This is regarding does last year's Bills team win this game? Y says no. Amy says in a heartbeat, yes, we win. Again, I just like I said, I think I don't know. I think there were too many situations last year where the team did just kind of roll over and just say, yeah, we're not winning this. Like, we're kind of out of it. And like you think to the Chiefs game, right? And like even that was the tail end of last year, right? The Chiefs playoff game, and where they did stick in it, they did fight back, claw back in it, and they ultimately they lose, but they made a game out of it. But just like I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting discussion. I think that they would have found a way to lose. I think that team got in their own way too often, whereas this team doesn't appear like it's a team that's going to get in its way very often. And if they do get in their way, they'll right the ship early enough that, again, they'll piece it together by the end that they're at least in the game. If not winning, they're going to get out of their own way before they do themselves in. Okay, David, what's your second takeaway here? And then we can move on to
we're going to make this quick because we're running out of time. But Edmonds and Milano are the best linebacker duo in the NFL. Find me another one. I mean, Edmonds has been playing extremely well. He's been playing much smarter, particularly in the past game. And I believe Eric is going to be doing a little bit on both of them later this week. Milano has just been so consistent and strong and really, really good, particularly just creating those splash plays that he's always done. But yeah, it's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive that the Bills are getting this kind of play out of their second level defenders. And I think it's super important given the injuries that they've had in the secondary in particular, you know, to be able to have your linebackers really step up and cover their areas of the field with I mean, take Mark Andrews out of the game yesterday.
That's wild. That's wild.
Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, particularly as a receiver. And they eliminated him. 1 catch for 6 yards, I believe, is what he finished with. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, Milano has a career high in tackles yesterday. 13, has 8 run stops. Again, also tackled Lamar in the open field. Like you said earlier, David, he kind of looked like he was going to get juked out of his shoes, if you will. But he, recovers, makes the open field tackle on Lamar. Edmonds also had a good game. They have both looked so good throughout the first 4 games of the season. And again, like I feel like we would be talking more about Edmonds, and we are talking a lot about Edmonds, but I feel like, a lot of people were expecting or anticipating kind of a better year from Edmonds, not necessarily a bounce back because he's never been bad. But, we're kind of expecting a further emergence here from Tremaine Edmonds in a contract year. And we have seen that. We certainly have seen that. This due, again, to maybe the fact that it's a contract year because that's just what happens with players. Or maybe it's the experience catching up to the, to the skill. And maybe it's the improved defensive line. I think that certainly plays a part in it. We've talked about that all year, how the increased production of the defensive line and just improvement of the defensive line would help these linebackers. And we've certainly seen all of these things impacting the game, impacting Edmonds and having a positive impact on his game. And we would be talking about it more if he weren't, in my opinion, being outshined by Matt Milano through the first 4 games. Again, he has just been incredible through these first 4 games all over the field, which he's long been. But again, just in the contract year of your starting middle linebacker, for him to be being not necessarily outshined, but matched in terms of shine, matched in terms of play of the linebacker who's already signed his long-term deal. Like, it's just this Bills defense is really good, and Matt Milano is very, very good. So is Edmonds. Okay, we're moving on, David. I don't know if you're ready, but we're moving on. Okay.
We're moving on.
What went right and what went wrong? This is the segment where we talk about what went right, and you can guess what went wrong. So a lot went right in this game. There's a lot that we could talk about, I feel like, especially second quarter and beyond. There's a lot that we could highlight, and we have highlighted a bunch of it. Again, Milano, Edmonds, just the defense in general, Crusoe. But one of the things that I do want to talk about, because people have been talking about it, 1, in chat, and 2, I just think it's important that we give this guy some shine. Khalil Shakir played not his first set of snaps, if you will, yesterday, because I do believe that he got some play in the Titans game, but kind of thrown into action yesterday with McKenzie going down with a concussion and, of course, Crowder breaking his ankle. Khalil Shakir is thrown into slot action. He's targeted NFL GSIS or NFL game stats and statistics or something. I don't know the words. But they said that he was targeted twice in that game yesterday. I counted 3. but I'm just Kyle, right? I'm an idiot. I'm not someone who is keeping track of these things, but I remember him being targeted 3 times, and I remember all 3 having a story, right? Telling their own story, if you will. First target, which was on Khalil Shakir's, what I believe was his first offensive snap of the game. It was at least the first snap after McKenzie went down. So Shakir comes out. I think he's out wide. And I don't know if Allen was targeting him. It might have just been a throwaway. The pass was so errant. But Khalil Shakir was the closest receiver in the vicinity. Right. So I'm surprised that wasn't a target. But maybe it was a miscommunication. Maybe it was just a throwaway. It's a wash. Next play. Quick pass, which Shakir catches behind the line of scrimmage, turns upfield, makes a guy miss with a shift, and then he picks up 14 yards. There's that yak that people have been talking about. Okay, so there's that second play. Khalil Shakir is already making an impact, and I think that's the game, or that's the play that a lot of Khalil Shakir truthers, me included to some extent, are talking about after this game, right? Given the ball in his hands, and he does something with it, right? Picks up 14 on a pass that he caught behind the line of scrimmage. Really good stuff there from Khalil Shakir. But my favorite Khalil Shakir play was in the fourth quarter, Buffalo's final drive. I think there was like 2:16 left on the clock. It's a 2nd and 3. Allen takes the snap, gets pressured immediately, makes 2 Ravens miss. I think he was still in the pocket when this happened. Shakir is downfield at this point, and Allen is doing his Josh Allen stuff in the backfield, right? Just kind of running around, trying to make Ravens miss. He ultimately gets out of the pocket, and he finds Shakir, who, got himself open in the second level, and he finds Shakir along the sideline there for 9 yards in the first down. So this is Shakir, again, his second NFL game in which he has received snaps, still within his first 50 career snaps at this point, I would imagine, right? It's not even 50 snaps into his NFL career. And when Josh Allen is doing his Josh Allen stuff like this, when he's running around in the backfield making defenders miss, and you as a receiver need to not only keep track of where he is and where he's looking at, but you need to be aware of the things around you and separate yourself from DBs or linebackers, in this case DBs, but get open, find open space and make yourself available to your quarterback who is running around. You have to keep all of these things into account. And Khalil Shakir does that, gets open along the sideline, and makes the toe-tapping catch along the sideline for the first down. Again, it was a 9-yard pickup, but it was a pickup that just kind of shows a maturity from Khalil Shakir that you're not expecting out of a guy not even 50 snaps into his NFL career. And that's really what makes me so excited about Khalil Shakir in this game. Again, the first play, the 14-yard pickup, was more eye-catching than that the second play, but it was the second play to me that gets me more excited. So, David, what are your thoughts on Khalil Shakir out of this game?
I love Khalil Shakir. Love they got this guy in the 5th round. He looks just ready whenever the ball comes to him, and he sort of looks and plays like a veteran to me almost. He'll probably have his rookie mistakes here and there. He's got some ways to go to refine his game, but that was it was pretty impressive that somebody like that, a 5th round rookie, can come in basically off the bench and just go right down and make a couple plays when his number gets called, and that's what you want. For me, what went right, and we're gonna try to make this as quick as possible. Kind of already went into this, winning not just a close game, but a tough game. We obviously had all the talk about, they can't win close games, yada. This was a tough game to win, period. And even if it wasn't, a comeback win, I mean, this would have been tough with the injuries. It would have been tough with the elements. And obviously, the Ravens dealt with injuries as well coming into this game. The Ravens also had to play with the rain and the elements. But the fact that the Bills came back and did this, just super impressive. Like you talked about, a resilient bunch, a resilient team that they want to be, and now they've kind of proven that they can be. And it's so impressive when a team like this can just, when you know how talented they are, and they get off to a bad start, that they come together and they just keep going and they just keep attacking and keep chipping away. And by the when that clock gets triple zeros in the fourth quarter and you're ahead, that's all that matters.
Very good. Again, no, you're right, and that's again to win a not only like you said a close game, but a tough game, right? I don't know if this is something that this team does last year, but through week 4, very good. This is going to open a can of worms, I fear, David. I fear I'm about to open a can of worms that I don't want to open, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like I'm holding a gun to my own head and I'm making myself say these things, but I'm going to do it, okay? I will say the things that no one else is going to say, right? I am the one true Bills podcaster, if you will. Okay. What went wrong for me? I'm going to say the run game. People have been talking or asking for not only through the first 4 weeks of the season, though the chatter has gotten louder, but just in recent years in general, right? When are the Bills going to get the run game going? What are they going to do to get the run game going, and when are they going to do it? I don't think the Bills really care to get the run game going, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, just looking at the offensive line that they've built, like, the OL hasn't been great in terms of run blocking this year, but just looking at the additions that they've made to the running back room throughout the last couple of years, it's never really been with obviously they're getting guys that are talented that they think can impact the game and can be useful, but they're doing so also with value in mind, where it's like Devin Singletary, he can be a guy, but also we're getting him on a day 3, round 3 contract. Zach Moss, he can be impactful. He can be a guy who we can use, but we're also getting him on a day 3 or a day 2, round 3 contract. James Cook, who they're not using. There are just so many things I want to talk about here. So there are numerous things that kind of factor into the run game not being able to get going. And Singletary yesterday had 4.5 yards per carry, which isn't bad. That's actually not a bad number at all. 4.5 yards per carry, kind of inflated by one 18-yard run, and he only had 11 runs. Again, he's not bad, but he is the only player thus far that I would describe as not bad. We're at the point where Zach Moss, I don't know why he's active every week. Spin rates, Moss is the bust. I don't know why Zach Moss is a weekly active. His snap percentage has gone down, I feel like, or at least his touches have gone down. But why is he factoring into the discussion? And James Cook, again, his career has gotten off to a very anticlimactic, some could even say bad, start from James Cook. But my issue is yes, they're putting him in the games and he's messing up, but they're not giving him the opportunities to remedy his mess ups.
Right.
They're not after he makes one screw up, he's done. And it's I understand, given how competitive this team wants to be and given what this team wants to accomplish this year, if you have a guy who's going out there and messing up every time you give him the ball, you're not going to give him the ball anymore. But how do you expect him to grow and improve on these mess ups if after he messes up once, you take him off the field for the rest of the game and he has to sit with that, not only for the rest of the game, but for the rest of the week? That whole week, you're just kind of letting it stew in his head. You're not really giving him the opportunity to remedy that and, help the team and help his brain, if you will. But again, that's a whole debate we can have about James Cook. And again, it's not like the offensive line, like we said, hasn't been a great run blocking unit, hasn't really been helping this running game get going. But I just think, again, given what they've put into the run game, I think they're getting about as much as you could expect them to get out of the running game, because it doesn't seem like something they really have put that much emphasis on. And again, they're kind of doing some creative things, like you brought up with the Singletary screen. They're doing some things interestingly to simulate the run game to get that production just with short passes and things like that. But I don't know what more you want out of this running game based off of the tools they have, I guess. So that raises my question, which we'll get into here also in True or Rubbish here momentarily, but I'll just raise this general question. So David, 1, your thoughts on just, that whole run game in general, and 2, would a better back fix this? Or is it just it really doesn't matter if you improve over Singletary or Moss or Cook, just given the offensive philosophy, how often they run the ball, the offensive line, you're really getting the most you can out of the run game?
Yeah, I think that, improving the running back position as a whole could be helpful. In particular, this team has worked as a committee backfield pretty much since McDermott has got here. And I just kind of wonder if they went out and got a true bell cow back, if that would help just make things a little more consistent. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But really, I mean, some of this just goes back to the O-line and sort of the talent that they have there. Um, Saffold is who he is at this point of his career. Dawkins is a good player. Mitch Morse is a good player, but he's not a power, like big, gap type of runner in the middle to really move things. He is somebody that you can pull a lot on the edge and somebody that can probably work pretty well on zone runs. But in terms of just going, head to head or double teaming against, bigger nose tackles, I think that could be a place where he might struggle. And Ryan Bates, a revelation of sorts, but still a UDFA find for a reason. He's not like some Pro Bowl type player, but he's a good player. He's a solid player. And Spencer Brown is, he's still figuring things out. Obviously had a lot of time off in the off season from his procedure that he had. So it just might take a little bit of time for this offensive line to continue to work together and gel and work with Aaron Cromer, but we will see what happens there.
Roy Collins writes, if you can't afford a diamond, you buy a stimulant. If you can't run the ball, you create a simulant run. And they've tried to do it, not even just this year. They've done it in past years as well, simulating the run game, if you will.
Yeah.
And again, maybe that's what they need to do. They do it. I said do. They do it somewhat effectively sometimes. We'll get into more of this discussion here in True or Rubbish. But David, what went wrong for you in this game?
Pretty obvious. First half mistakes, and you tip the ball up right to Marlon Humphrey. You fumble the ball again. Both of these in your own end. You struggle to move the ball. They punted quite a bit in that first half, but once they just sort of got their heads out of their asses, they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they won this game. Now, hopefully, moving forward, you make fewer of those first half mistakes, so you don't require a heart-thumping comeback that leaves some of your fans in a bit of a catatonic state by the end of it. But, the fact that they can do it and prove their resiliency, as we've said, as what sounds like a motorcycle drives right by you.
Man, the number of like motorcycle / dirt bikes / mini bikes that have been ravaging my neighborhood in recent. I sound like I'm 80 years old in that Clint Eastwood movie, which I've never seen. I assume that's.
I have seen that movie, and I don't watch a lot of movies, but I have seen that movie. It's a good movie.
Am I right? Is that the
that's more or less
is that the basis of the movie? Is that the plot?
That's not that far off.
Is there people with motorbikes in his neighborhood and he's mad about it?
People with old cars with big guns, but whatever. But we're not getting into a Gran Torino discussion here. We're almost out of time. But yeah, make fewer mistakes, Bills, so that you can just have a more pleasant time playing football.
We are now moving on to everyone's favorite segment. It's True or Rubbish.
True or Rubbish.
Let's go. This is the segment where I give David a number of like statements, and he tells me whether or not these statements are true or rubbish, as the name would suggest. So, David, topic number 1, true or rubbish? Shaq Lawson, Bills defensive end, who had he was like one of 2 players who had pressure on Lamar Jackson there at the end of the game on that 4th and goal, kind of moving him to the sideline. And then ultimately Jordan Poyer picks off the ball. Shaq Lawson has done enough to earn every week active status, even when the defensive line regains full health.
We're going to call that rubbish.
That is rubbish.
Because they simply have too many. They have too many guys on that defensive line. Somebody's got to be inactive. This is not a slight on Shaq Lawson, who played very well against Baltimore from what I saw, but just truly just a numbers game. Truly just a numbers game.
Wow, that is bold. I did not. I don't know if I agree, David. How many DL do they have active right now?
Like 7, right? 8, something like that.
So I say you make Zach Moss inactive, right? I say you just
Listen, I'm okay with that. But I don't think that that's what they're going to do.
I say you take a guy out of the running back committee that isn't doing anything right now. Zach, look, I was shocked yesterday on that 3rd and 1. This is unrelated. On that 3rd and 1 when they handed it to Zach Moss instead of doing a Josh Allen power.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, right, you're down how many points at that point. You don't want the franchise quarterback to be taking a hit in that situation when he doesn't need to. Just don't make him do it if he doesn't need to. But just I was shocked, and like we all expected, Zach Moss didn't pick it up. But anyway, true or rubbish? Brandon Beane, he is a cap wizard. That is true. No rubbish about it. But true or rubbish? Brandon Beane is ultimately able to work out an extension for Poyer, Edmonds, or both.
For Edmonds, I'm gonna say true.
This was true all after all. Couldn't believe it. It was true.
For Poyer, I'm going to say rubbish.
That is rubbish all after all. It was all
got a twofer.
rubbish.
That's a twofer there.
I think Edmonds is playing super well, and I think that continues this season. I think this is somebody that they will feel very comfortable with. I mean, they felt very comfortable with. They love Tremaine Edmonds and what he brings to the table, and the fact that he's been calling this, pretty complex defense since he's been a rookie. That I think that means a lot for them. I think he's clearly taking a good step forward this year. I imagine that continues, and of course, a very young player. You like to invest in young players. Whereas Poyer, a little bit older. If the Bills do win a Super Bowl this year, then I think that he is just sort of takes that and runs and gets a contract somewhere else. And, I just don't see Poyer in a Bills uniform in 2023.
I hope for his sake the Bills do win the Super Bowl and then someone just pays him gobs of money, right? That would be
gobs of money. He deserves it.
He certainly does. It's just given the Bills cap situation and roster makeup, I don't know if it's here, sadly. But and again, Edmonds, we've talked about him in the past, but like I was kind of always on the fence regarding re-signing Edmonds, but that was kind of assuming he was, just a marginally better player than he's been in his career. If he's this, I'm all for, paying Tremaine Edmonds. This is the one. This is the one that people are gonna, I guess, either a lot of people already have left the podcast, to be honest. But this is gonna be the one where people either they love us or hate us. David, true or rubbish? The Bills add a running back from outside of the organization at some point this season.
Rubbish. That is rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
Wow.
They've put so many resources into this running back room. What is adding another one in the middle of the season going to do? Is that really going to change things? Probably not. Sorry to squash everyone's Saquon Barkley dreams, but I just don't see that happening anytime soon. So,
look, I think I agree. I'm about 65% sure I agree with you, David. Maybe even 70%. We'll go a nice 68%.
Hey, that was my number playing football in high school.
Really?
Number 68.
Very nice. You got a jersey anywhere?
Actually, I do. I'll bring it up next podcast.
Can I get that framed in my background? You'll be Allen. I'll have David Fox. I'll do it, David. I will do it. But no, I mean, Barkley makes a ton of sense. There's a lot of things. You just have to do a little bit of research, right? Like I'm like a flat earther right now. I'm a Barkley truther. A lot of it makes sense. If you just look into it, a lot of it makes sense. But yeah, Barkley, I think it makes sense. Is Edmonds even 24 yet? I don't know. I do know he's in his 5th year now, though.
Yeah.
I think he's 24 in his 5th year.
I think he is 24.
In his 5th year. That's crazy from Tremaine Edmonds. That means last year he was 23 in his 4th year.
Crazy.
That's crazy. So that's a meme. That's a Bills Twitter meme. I do love it. Okay. I think that sorry, I was just reading a chat talking about Saquon Barkley. The people have been wanting to talk about Saquon Barkley all night, and we've given them the opportunity here. We're moving on now We're moving our focus from the professional game, which we've talked about for the last 1 hour and 19 minutes, and we are instead kind of shifting focus to the collegiate game. This is David's stamp of approval, where David looks at college football and he gives his stamp of approval, as the segment name would suggest. Not very creative when it comes to naming those, but he looks at the game and he highlights one on this weekend slate that has some Buffalo or Bills connections. Maybe, there's a player that we should watch on one of these teams, a player who has connections to a current Bills player, a player that, is coached, or a team that is coached by a person who used to be on the Bills staff or has connections to the Bills. Obviously, there are numerous things, or it's just a fun game, right? There really isn't that deep. David, what is this week's game that you are giving the stamp of approval?
I've recommended this team before. They are ranked number 19 coming into this game. It is Kansas, undefeated 5-0 versus TCU 4-0. This is going to be a fun game, folks. Kansas is undefeated, and we're in the month of October. This is nuts. I don't think people quite understand just how insane of an accomplishment this is. Kansas is like kind of for real. This is awesome. And Kyle's mic seems messed up, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, it broke.
TCU has just annihilated Oklahoma last week to prove that they are also for real. This is going to be a fun game. I am personally taking the Kansas Jayhawks. Walk, chalk, Jayhawk. Kyle, do you have anything else to add to that?
It's going to be an electric game. Who's their quarterback? Jaden Daniels?
Something like
that. Is that his name? Yeah, he's going to win. Jalen Daniels. My bad. He's going to win the damn Heisman. He's going to mess around and do it. Lance Leipold, former Buffalo Bulls coach, best in the nation. He's going to win Coach of the Year awards. I think they could go, in the 4-team playoff. Forget the 12-team playoff. I think we got. You got Kansas. In the playoff this year. Exactly. With Oklahoma playing this year,
imagine if the Big 12 returns to relevance because of the University of Kansas.
It's been written in the stars. Nick Foti writes, "I'm hearing Kansas is a basketball school." That's fake news. That is fake news.
Fake news.
But yeah, so here's just story time. My microphone broke while we were just recording or doing this live. One of the things that I told myself when this podcast started in, I believe it was July of 2021, my microphone was broke still. It was already broken. And I was like, I need to get a new microphone. Every week since when I've been setting up this setup, I've been like, I need to get a new microphone. Just haven't gotten around to it.
Can't do it.
I knew this would happen. I knew it would break on podcast at some point. You know what? Maybe next week I'll have a new podcast microphone. And I'm sure the audio quality just took a shit because I'm now moving the mic around. I don't care. You know what? It's a great show.
Let's wrap it up.
And that's why the people love the Cover One Roundup here live each and every Monday on the Cover One YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't and you're still here. Again, there's a big red subscribe button there below us. So please consider subscribing. A bunch of great content, bunch of great shows here most nights. We have, again, this show on Mondays. We have the Air Raid Hour here at 9 o'clock. We have Cover One Buffalo. We have Disguised Coverage. We have Going Deep. Bunch of great shows. And again, subscribe if you're here. We have fantasy coverage, great stuff. Also One Pass, again, that is our subscription service, if you will. Exclusive written content, in-depth breakdowns, and access to the Cover One Premium Slack. Great value, $57 annually. And then also check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, use promo code COVER1 to have your initial deposit of up to $100 matched. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes. Leave a 5-star review. Subscribe to all the Cover One iTunes feeds. That would be much appreciated. Make sure to follow David on Twitter at.
You can follow me at DFoxy, at DFAUXY, for a whole bunch of very excitable but probably lukewarm takes overall.
And I was going to bring this up anyway, but I didn't. Spin, right? How about the Bills draft the Syracuse running back? I was not informed of this man's Twitter bit until earlier today. I don't know how I've gone numerous weeks without being told of this man's Twitter bit, but it is the greatest thing I've ever seen. David, are you familiar with this?
I am not.
Oh my God. I'm going to read some of his tweets. Oh, this is how we're ending the show. It's okay. For the 49 people still in here, you're going to love these tweets because they're incredible. His name is Sean Tucker. Again, Syracuse running back. This is what he tweeted after Syracuse's 59-0 win over Wagner. And you might be wondering, how does he know the score? Well, you'll see. Sean Tucker tweets, Saturday we won, Syracuse 59, Wagner 0. I'm pleased with the outcome of the game. 5 wins and now a much-needed bye week. I'm pleased with my performance, but with 7 games left, I'm still working hard. The grind never stops. I rushed for 232 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 receptions for 15 yards. Hashtag pleased.
Just keeping himself humble, man.
Friday, we won, Syracuse 22, Virginia 20. I'm pleased with the outcome of the game. We made mistakes, but we are 4-0. I'm not pleased with my performance, but I'm doing my part to help the team win. The grind never stops, nor will number 34. I rushed for 60 yards and 5 receptions for 45 yards. He just tweets out his stats and says whether or not he was pleased with it.
Yep.
I cannot wait for him to get drafted by the Bills, and he tweets, today I was drafted by the Buffalo Bills organization. I am pleased to be joining this great organization, but I'm not pleased with where I have been drafted, and my signing bonus will not be that big. I look forward to helping my team win. It's going to be incredible. Right, Tim writes, reminds me of those Civil War Andrew Luck messages.
Yes,
but this is a real player. This is a player tweeting whether or not he is pleased with his performances. I love it. Right, like what's the the wide receiver thing where it's like quarterback, I love Jesus,
yes.
running back tweet, derp, wide receiver, the enemy speaks softly and carries a knife. Just these they're not derp tweets. They're the opposite of derp tweets.
That's right.
But also they're still derp.
They're
tweets.
very real.
Right. They're incredible. I'd be pleased with drafting Sean Tucker. All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Silagyi. Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.